Hey guys, Overlord Prime here again, bringing you another map reading video. So, the feedback from the previous video was so good and so overwhelmingly positive that I decided to continue the series. I appreciate everybody's comments. I did find a hilarious comment by Chris Hiss saying I should name this Map Reading Rainbow. As great as that name is, I am very scared that that may cause problems down the road. So, great suggestion, but I probably won't be using that. Anyways, this is going to be another map. It's going to be Tundra, and I'm playing my TVP on the north spawn. So, let's start. Obviously, just like before, we're going to do a map composition, right? What we have on our side versus what they have on their side. And primarily want to be looking at the heavy matchup because this is a very heavy-centric matchup. And we want to look at the medium or the speedy tanks that can potentially contest the hill. So first off, the heavies, we have a 54, E100, double super conch, actually no, triple super conch, versus their 60 TP, double AMX M4, and their E100, right? Those are the top 5. That's a very bulky lineup on both sides. I would say we have a slight advantage because triple super conch is very, very difficult to deal with for most teams. It's just a lot of DPM, a lot of firepower that's very hard to remove. But the enemy has 60 TPs, which are extremely strong hold-down vehicles, right? They're competitive against, E100s on hold-down fights. So they have a slight advantage when it comes to the bulk here, but we have an advantage when it comes to trading. An E5, a VZ versus a 277 and Rinoceronte. That's a fight in our favor. Then we have the medium matchup, Lion, STB1, a TVP versus just their Lion. They actually don't have any mediums. For some reason, they gave them an extra heavy in a Type 5, and then it gave them an extra TD, right? The JPE STRV E3 versus our 268 version 4 and E3. So they got a lot of bulk in HP, and the trade-off being that they don't have any speedy tanks. Obviously, standard EBR mirror matchup, 2 Arties. We don't really care about these too much. We do have a Conch GC, which is a favorable Artie in this situation, just because of the high arc, right? The high arc of the CGC means it can support the hill fight much more easily than any alternative. So obviously, you want to choose where you want to go. There are 2 options you have typically in a matchup like this. You can either choose to go... Let me just pause here. You can choose to go to the bushes here, right here. And what you do is you shoot the water side that they cross in. Generally, this is a very good play if you know that you have vehicles that are going to go hill. If you don't know if your team's going to go hill, then it becomes a very risky option because you're sacrificing a speedy vehicle to take a supporting role on the hill takeover, right? So it's not really a smart move in this matchup because even though we have a medium advantage, it's a little risky because a Lion and an STB aren't exactly the fastest vehicles. So it's better to support the hill, especially as a TVP because of my fast clip, right? Rather than taking a long-range clip by taking the center position right in front of me, it's better to go to the base of the hill at E0 and punish anybody that decides to climb or even take the top. Obviously, I have some reservations about taking the top of the hill because that's where I'll be going, and it's primarily due to their matchup. They have a lot of bulky fast tanks that can go together, like a Lion, a EBR, and a 277 are extremely dangerous. And a TVP's one major weakness is even though it can burst really quickly and burst reliably, it doesn't do enough in a single clip, right? 1280 burst is not exactly the most threatening thing. So one of the worrisome things in this vehicle that you can do is overcommit. And in particular, it's overcommitting with no support. Because whether you like it or not, a 20-second downtime, right, is still 20 seconds of you being shot for free. So we have an STB going here, our Lions committing and supporting from the D5 spot that I mentioned earlier. EBR is doing a scout through the water to make sure he spots the crossing. So we do get early information here. I decide to not climb. And the main reason being, I am unsure if our team's going to be able to support against an enemy climb. So if you look at the matchup right now, or look at the map, a Rinoceronte and 277, both pretty fast tanks that are already at the base of the hill compared to our base vehicles, STB and myself, we could potentially climb up. But if those two vehicles climb up, we have no support. The E5 will get to the base of the hill around here by the time they're already at the top, right? And then these vehicles, which are slower than the E5, are gonna get to the base of the hill, just a tad bit slower and a little bit too late. So the worst case scenario is it's two mediums, potentially, fighting two heavies on top of the hill. This is a fight that we can potentially DPM out if the STB stays alive, but one of us will most likely die. So it's a very, very big risk. So the alternative is to wait at the bottom, which is what I'll be doing, and punish a climb. So let them take the hill. They have a favorable position here, right, and a favorable engagement at the beginning, but instead we're going to make them pay for it. Now, this is a mistake that I make, and it's that I have not switched round types because I expected an EBR to be here, or potentially even the Lion, right? This is about the timing that a medium would climb up. But if I'm expecting a heavy tank, APCR would be better, just because you're shooting at the side, and even though the distance to these vehicles are very, very close, having APCR that hit more accurately where you're aiming is much better when it comes to perma tracking, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So the goal here is to track somebody. So I'm aiming at this guy, and my mistake right there, it's very brief, but that should have been 3 shots of damage. You want to be aiming for the sprocket because even though it takes 2 shots to break, the TVP fires so quickly in its intraclip that it can fire 2 shots, track, slow the enemy down, and get an extra shot. So if I had APCR, that would have been a little more reliable, just because I don't have to worry about spaced armor really blocking anything. So that was a mistake on my part. Not too much of a mistake, but in an engagement like this where you're trying to punish the hill climb, missing one shot like that can make you pay later down the road. Rinoceronte does see us punish that hill climb, and he decides to back off. So it's a very good thing that we ended up punishing that 277 because it scared off the Rinoceronte. But it's still bad because we can't take the hill, right? The 277's at the top, but now he has base support, 60 TP AMX, right? That's a very, very big punish if you try to climb against that. We have the HP to brute force this, but the coordination required for that is a little too high for a lot of people to do that in pubs. So instead, I decided to just stay hidden. I just decided to switch and begin to prepare for an enemy counter push. The enemy Rinoceronte backed off, the AMX is in the 8-line water, so the big worry here is that they're going to go into the F line, right, where the EBR is right now. I can't really do much. I do try getting some shots here against a 277, but you'll see that I just back off right away because that is not favorable engagement for me. I do see a Rinoceronte, potentially AMX going middle, and I begin to rotate there. Now, one thing you should notice is that the AMX on their team, instead of going to the water to support the Rinoceronte, he's actually going towards the hill. So they're bolstering their hill even more. And this means the Rinoceronte is either going to have a delayed AMX supporting him, or he's isolated. Both which are going to be favorable for me. So I pick him. I'm waiting just in case the AMX is going to poke. So rather than committing right away, I'm going to see if the AMX decides to rotate from the hill and go to the water area. The EBR in their team has taken the hill, and this is a bit worrying because an EBR on top of the hill can shoot you, and you won't be able to see him until you get hit. I'm using the E100 as an anchor right now, so whatever he does, you notice how he's driving the wide angle, right? This means he'll be seen first, right? Imagine a line of sight here. He'll be seen first, he'll get shot, and I'm hugging close on the inside because what's going to occur is we have support here on the right, EBR and line controlling this, so there's nobody that's going to really punish us here, or even here, because they're going to start controlling this area up here. So the only worrying thing is a tank on the inside corner. And what will happen is the E100 will take a shot, and because I'm so close, I spend very little time exposing myself, right? Which gives them less time to escape, and I can clip. So you notice the way I'm driving in the inside is coinciding with the speed that he's going in the outside. And here I decide to not commit this way. There's too many tanks that are on this side. It's an empty flank. It's not worth committing to. Instead, I notice an STRV that's exposed on the 4 line by himself, along with the Lion. Now the 268 version 4 is getting shot from the hill, but an STRV is isolated. The Lion has overcommitted onto the hills on the E1 position. So instead of sitting back here getting shot by an EBR the whole time, I overcommit, start clipping down the STRV, and immediately reload. There's no point holding my one shot because if I poke over against the Lion, it's not going to be too good for me. Now, this is a situation that a lot of players may misread. If we just go back here and look at what's occurring here, right? Two super conks left here against a horde of enemy tanks. 60 TP, E3, JPE, E100, and they're all low HP, which is pretty big, but then they have a Lion flanking them. Now, one of the plays that someone would consider is a straight push around this way, take the hills, and clip the Lion in the back, but what you'll know is that the positions that the super conks are fighting in have a lot of cover. If the Lion overcommits onto the super conks, there's a rock formation right around here on F1 that you can see on the minimap. He can drive around that and kill the super conks and not get punished. And what this does is it puts me into a very bad spot because I'll be overcommitted onto E1, and there's an escape, but I've been overcommitted. They have all the hold down pressure, and I get 0 damage out. So essentially what I do is I'll go to E1, get caught, have no damage, and even if I take nothing in return, I just leave. So essentially this is about like a 100-meter dash forward and back for nothing in your favor, right? You're wasting movement. And it may be possible for us to commit and coordinate with the Lion, slowly pick these guys off from the edge, but the issue is they can easily burst and push through either side. Right? A Lion at full HP is pretty huge. E3 and 60 TP with the armor is very dangerous. One play that you can make to respond to this is a defensive play. And there's a few defensive positions. There's a defensive position right here where you can punish and scout this drive across, right? But the main problem here is they have so many tanks that are bulky and hold down that they can play the ridgeline, spot you, and then you're stuck. And eventually, they don't have to send all tanks here. They can just rotate some around the mountainside and get close to the underside and they just fight you there. So you're stuck. So the better play here is to leave. The Super Conquerors are not able to be saved. The Lion is not committing. He's playing hold down in the south. So this ends up being a smart move. The EBR drives off the hill, which is huge. And here, you end up having 2 choices. There is a play we can make right now, and it's to take the 0 line flank. Essentially, what we're doing here is a flank trade. We're giving up the 1 line, and even though it's delayed response, we're responding by taking the 0 line from the enemy team. And there's a reason why this ends up being a good play. Yes, we just lost the 1 line flank, and yes, we're now beginning the 0 line takeover. The reason why this is fine is because even though there is a time delay for taking this flank, which typically results in a negative trade, the positional advantage of the hill is so great that it makes up for it. And the reason is, when you take the hill, it has such good vantage points and line of sight on the whole parts of the map. Basically, the entire 4 line is spotted and like shootable from the hill. That when you take it back, if the enemy hasn't already begun engaging the hill, they will be shot on the cross towards the hill. So the enemy essentially has to cross all the way up to D4, D5, right? This side area here, even like G6 here, and then they commit all the way to H8, H9 before we fully win the hill in order for that to be like a difficult engagement. But they have nothing but slow tanks. E3, JP100, 60 TP, E100s. Their rotation speed is not going to be fast enough for them to contest our fight on the hill. Which means if we take it, we can easily turn it back on them. Which means that even though we are down on time and down on position, we can take it back by taking the hill. Now, one thing you can do here, which I forgot to mention, is there are 2 plays here. There's a play going through the water here, and there's a play going through here, right? Both seem very similar, but the play to go on here onto the enemy's cap side is a little bit stronger. And here's why. The EBR on the enemy team has already begun rotating through the hillside to take this. Normally this isn't too dangerous, but if you notice, our 3 tanks on the hill are suppressed by 3 tanks here, right? And even if one of them goes away, 2 tanks is enough to stop them, right? This is a good, very strong crossfire they have going on. And if they have a tank rotating off the hill, suddenly it's 2 tanks on the low ground here fighting, right? 2v2 STB E100 versus a 60 TP and potentially an AMX M4. And then they'll be shot in the back by an EBR. So the best play here is to not commit down into this potential crossfire, is to take a slightly wider detour, maybe buy my team a little bit of space. And the worst case scenario, if the EBR runs away for free, is that I end up spending 5 to 10 more seconds on the rotation to regroup with the 2 vehicles here. The best case scenario is the EBR doesn't run away and I catch him and then I kill him, which is exactly what happens here. Now the crossfire that the EBR potentially could have set up is no longer there. I aim for the side of the 60 TP and get a kill. And I immediately begin going for the hill push. This is a push you cannot delay on. The enemy is going to start reacting, right? They've noticed we just picked off this lower ground area. We killed the RD. Now the enemy has a contingent of forces up here on the hill, and they can easily rotate through the H line and support. If we are caught in this open ground here without controlling the actual hill, then we can get surrounded. These tanks on the low ground will just suppress us, right? We can't push in. And the tanks on the back, 60 TP and E100 most likely, potentially an E3 or a Lion in the worst case scenario, will shoot us in the back, which puts us in a very, very bad spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aggro very aggressively here. The enemy has done what I feared, and they're using 2 tanks to suppress the other side. I did see the AMX just shoot. I'm going to take a hit here. So what you notice there is I'm actually aiming for the other AMX. Rather than shoot this guy up close where I can clip him and go 4 for 4, I decided to go for this guy. And there's a big reason. I mentioned earlier that the enemy is able to suppress the 3 tanks on our side of the hill with these 2 vehicles, the AMX and the 277 setting up a crossfire. So rather than doing 1280 to this vehicle here, it's much more worthwhile to punish the AMX in front of me that's setting up a crossfire. That way the 3 tanks that are fighting a 2 tank crossfire ends up being just a 3 versus 1 fight. So by killing this tank on the right, I free up the north side of the hill. And what this does is it causes the hill to collapse and the AMX in front of me to eventually die if we happen to get caught and slow played in this position. I do end up blocking a shot from an E100 there. I don't really know what happened. I thought he was trying to shoot underneath my tracks, but I digress. Now, at this point, I'm looking at the line in the back, and we're going to go over this real quick because, you know, it's always good to understand what a bad play and bad position looks like. The Lion is in a bad position. He's in a very bad position. And this is why. He's playing a very defensive position. What we have going on here, it's weird to explain this, but we have 2 tanks in the front, or fighting a corner against an AMX. And then we have a Lion in the back. Essentially, the position we have right now is a corner trade with a Lion suppressing a counter push. And this is very good if you're playing defensively, because the AMX can't push out to kill us. But, as I said before, the big worry we have here is an E100, a 60 TP, and now that we know the Lion is not pushing south, and we can assume it's just maybe an E3, they're going to be going south. So we know the AMX here is suppressed. He's not going to be counter pushing us, and if he does, we'll be trading him with him normally anyways. But as a result, by being so defensive, you are caught off guard, right? Look at the amount of ground that has to be crossed. The Lion has to go across this entire terrain. And while he's doing this, even when he gets to this area here, look how exposed he is. So there is a very bad worst case scenario here that can occur where on the cross back he ends up getting shot by one or two big heavies. So I'm waiting for my reload. I'm getting ready to just charge in. I do not care if I take a hit. I'm loaded and I'm going to immediately start clipping. Now I make sure all of my shots hit, but I have to quickly get into the hill. So I climb up the hill. So we got by in the nick of time, but you can see the lion, right? He made that push a little bit late and a 60 TP has shown up. And as I said before, this position is completely exposed, which is why in that engagement, the moment you saw the AMX fire, you had to close this gap, right? You do not want to be caught on their side of the hill when they're making a counter push to react. The lion does take a big hit, but he should be fine from now. He should be able to get into safety. The lion has taken the north. Rather than sitting on the hill with the rest of my teammates, I'm going to try getting some map control and take over A or B9. And the reason why you want to take control here is if all of your tanks get caught on the hill, they can easily hide one tank on cap and suddenly you're trying to fight off of the hill. It's not really a good position to be in because you're fighting against tanks that are in like hull downs, that are like hiding behind cover, right, have lane control, so they could put cap pressure. So instead of like pushing in here, I'm just controlling this. Making sure the enemy doesn't get any free positions, making sure they get punished for not being aggressive enough and taking advantage of these positions here. Now that the enemy is separated, I can easily just push this lion. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of a detour. I'm assuming that the lion is going to be hiding. So I do check for A1 and then I go down from A1. We have an AMX and a lion hiding on the hill. That's actually fine. They're acting as cover. Ignore my bad driving. Now, if I wanted to cut off a lion, what you would have done here is you would cut straight down to D4, like through the cap circle, and you would go down to E2, E3. It may seem risky against an E3, but if E3 tries shooting you across the bridge, he actually gets shot in the side. So it's actually a relatively safe cross. Now, the one thing I have done here that is a little bit risky, that I will admit, is the one-line push normally would be dangerous because there's a lot of positions that can be used defensively on the other side. There's J1, right? There's H1. There's even G2, well, I guess no, it's H2 here, where they can be hold down as you push out, right? And the worst case scenario is they can be J2 and they punish you because you're overexposed playing the hillside on H2. And the reason why this is so dangerous is they have the shot advantage, right? I'm driving into the enemy team. I know where the E3 is. I can guess that the E100 hasn't moved much because his camo's not great. And we have hill control, so he's most likely still sitting in K5. So what's going to happen is if I push H2, I'll be spotted by an E3 or E100 even. And then the lion can choose to engage me whenever he sees fit. This is normally a bad engagement. The reason why this isn't so bad right now is the lion's one shot. If you were fighting a tank that was healthier, say the lion didn't take any damage and he was at 1,500 or so, you could alternatively just take the 3-line play. Take the houses here, and the reason why the house is a lot safer is you have crossfire from the hill. The AMX and the lion can easily shoot into the houses if the lion decides to push, and you could just play ring around the rosy around the buildings in a 1v1. But because the lion is one shot, I'm not too concerned. If he decides to shoot me, obviously a 4-second interdrum's not too dangerous. I can punish him for that and just eat the hits. So I'm going for a pick on the E100, going for a pick on the E3. I see a lion to my right. I'm not going to bother running from a shot. I'm going to see if I can get a kill. And obviously my shot doesn't go where I wish it would, but that's fine. Heat rounds don't work too well against the space mantlet of a lion. And that was a wonderful 10 kill game. And there we go with the score. 5,300 damage, 10 kills, and a TVP. And 24 shots fired, 22 pens, 23 direct hits. So while my damage isn't too high, a lot of my damage ended up resulting in very crucial kills that ended up breaking flanks or securing positions. One thing to note is to understand when a flank trade should occur and when it's favorable. Typically, a flank trade is something that's risky because most of the flank trades that happen in games are done as a reactionary measure. And as I mentioned before, when you respond to a flank loss with a flank push, you are put under heavy pressure because now the enemy has an entire side of the map to push from one side to the next, right? Which eventually causes a surround. And you're just beginning an engagement. So if you take too long to kill the enemy will slowly just flank and punish you. And that was evident here when we were pushing the south side of the hill. If we took just another 15 seconds fighting that low ground against that AMX to climb into the hill, we would have easily been shot by the 60 TP one more time, and the E100 would have gotten a shot on us too. So that was a potential 1500 HP that we could have lost pushing the hill, and that is an easy tank death for us, and that game would have potentially been a lot closer than it actually was. But because we knew the pressure was on us, and we pushed the hill and picked key targets, we won the hill quicker than we should have, and we took less damage for it, which allowed us to turn the map around on them because we took the high ground from them. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I will be doing more of these. Again, put comments, let me know what you guys think about it, any changes, any things I should add, anything you did or did not like. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys around. Have a good one, and thanks for watching.